It's a privilege to have back with us Dr. James Merritt. He's the host of an international broadcast ministry called Touching Lives, which reaches into over 120 countries. He's also the founding and senior pastor of Pointe Church in Duluth, Georgia, and he previously served as president of the world's largest Protestant denomination, the Southern Baptist Convention. You may have seen him featured on 60 Minutes, on Hannity and Combs, or other popular programs, including, of course, 100 Huntley Street. He's the author of several books, including God, I've Got a Question, which we highlighted last time he was with us, and then this book, How to Impact and Influence Others, which we want to dive into this time. James, welcome back.
Good to be with you, Ron. My pleasure.
Now, for those who may have missed our interview last time, I want to always remind people you can go on to 100huntley.com and you can just put in Dr. Merritt, or you can put in God, I've Got a Question, and you can search and you can find that interview and just watch right online, all right? But we do want to talk about this book. Now, on the surface, your book title could be misconstrued as a how-to of manipulating people. How to impact and influence others. Who are you talking about being influencing in this?
Well, it's a great question because the premise behind the book is very simple. I believe in the impact of one. As a matter of fact, I lead men's conferences all over the country called Impact One conferences, and I really believe that the average person who has Jesus Christ living within them especially greatly underestimates the impact and influence they can have on others. I believe God made us different so we can make a difference. And when people come across your path in just the daily walk of life, Ron, whether it's at the grocery store, the doctor's office, where you work, live, play, it's not a coincidence. God continuously brings people into our spheres of influence so that we can have an impact on them and an influence on them that will far outlast us and far outlive us long after we leave this planet. And you know, history is replete with individuals who made unbelievable impacts that impact us this day. I give just one little example. George Washington, in a real sense, impacts the world to this day by the tremendous leadership he gave, by leading America to become an independent nation. Certainly Abraham Lincoln, to this day, certainly has a great influence on our nation in particular. And you could talk about Thomas Edison. I mean, we're lighted up today because of a man whose influence is still living with us every time we flip a light switch on. So, no, we're not all going to be worldwide famous, but everybody can have an impact and influence, kind of like a rock. You throw a rock into a lake, the ripples continue to go out and out, far beyond what the size of that rock is. Your life can be the same way.
Well, someone watching right now, maybe with the remote in their hand, is about to change the channel because they're saying, oh, I'm not a big leader. You know, I don't need to listen to this interview, and about to change the channel. What would you say to that?
Great question. You know, John Maxwell has said simply that leadership is influence, and the truth of the matter is everybody has influence on somebody. If you're a grandparent, you've got influence on your grandchildren, or a parent or a child. If you've got even one person under you in an office complex, you've got influence over that person. If you're married, you've got influence. Everybody has influence. The question is, how would you let God use you to leverage that influence He's given you to have a great impact on the lives of other people?
Well, I loved one thing you said. I loved a lot of things you said in the book, but one thing that jumps out here in the introduction. You say, I can't do anything about your heritage, and neither can you, but you can do something about your legacy. And then you tell a story that I had never heard before about someone named Edwin Booth.
Edwin Booth. I actually got this from a book that Paul Harvey wrote, the famous radio commentator, called Now You Know the Rest of the Story. He was one of my favorite, a strong believer, by the way, and a great man who recently passed. But in one of his books, he tells the story of how Edwin Booth, who was the brother of John Wilkes Booth, who assassinated, which, by the way, that's a popular thing right now, the assassination of the president, President Lincoln. When he had heard that what his brother had done, his whole world was destroyed, because he knew, even though at that time in his life, he was known as one of the greatest actors on the stage, he knew that he would no longer be known as an actor. He would always be forever known as the brother of John Wilkes Booth, who assassinated President Lincoln. And it really drove him into a deep, deep, deep depression. Well, the story is he was in Baltimore for a meeting, and actually was there doing a play, and he was about to get on a train. And as the train approached the station, the crowd surged forward, and they knocked this little boy onto the train tracks below. He wrapped his one arm around a pole and reached down and grabbed with the collar of the other boy and just saved his life as the train kind of came by. Didn't think that much about it. A few weeks later, he got a letter from the office of the President, Ulysses S. Grant, thanking him for what he had done, because the life he had saved was Robert Lincoln, the son of Abraham Lincoln. Wow. So the point being, you know, there are a lot of listeners out there who maybe maybe they didn't come from a very good home. Maybe their dad was an alcoholic. Maybe they have made their own personal mistakes in the past. And what I try to say in the book is, you know, I really can't do anything about your past, and neither can you, except experience the grace of God and the forgiveness of God. But what you can do, you can change your legacy. You can change what you leave behind. And in this book, I share the 9 keys on how you can do that just in your everyday life. The kind of person you are and the way you treat other people, you can have an impact and an influence that will far outlive and outlast you long after you leave this planet.
That's such an important message to hear. Well, I have to say, you had me in chapter 1 because the title was The Killer App. And I'm an iPhone user and
so
an iPad, and,
right.
and you're always looking for the latest and greatest app. You know, what's that killer app out there that can do application, for those who don't know what it means, little programs on your.
Right.
But always looking for something neat. And so you kind of highlight here's the big one when it comes to leadership and influence, the killer app, and maybe you can describe what you mean there.
And Ron, one that you don't hear, in fact, I don't know if it's ever been in any kind of a leadership book, but actually the dirty little secret about this book, there's nothing profound or new about it really, in the sense that this is really based on what Paul talks about in Galatians, the fruit of the Spirit. You know, I was reading one day, I try to read the Bible through different lenses. For example, the book of Proverbs. I read Proverbs every day, and a lot of people think that the book of Proverbs is just a book of, you know, one-line sentences, kind of one-liners that Solomon just kind of put together, willy-nilly. It's really not that at all. The phrase "my son" is used 27 times in Proverbs. It's a letter that a dad wrote to his son on how to live a successful life. Well, as I was reading through and studying the fruit of the Spirit, I began to realize, you know, if every day, think about this, Ron, if I told you that I was going to offer you a job, and here's all I told you about the job. You'd be paid a decent salary and all, but if I said your boss will be a person of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, I wouldn't have to tell you anything else about that job. You'd say, I'll take that job. If I can work for a person like that, male or female is irrelevant. If I can work for someone that I know every day will be a person of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, I'm all in. Well, the truth of the matter is, through the power of the Holy Spirit, we can all exhibit those qualities in our life. Well, it's not coincidental that the first app or the first fruit is love. That's kind of foundational. And I, in my book, share how one of the greatest traits people can bring to the lives of other people that will influence and impact them is just loving them. You know, it's the greatest commandment of all. You know, Jesus said that. It's love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so one of the things I also do in the book is I give you a habit to develop on a daily basis. And that one of the things I say is, other than just your immediate family, tell somebody or show somebody every day that you love them. It is amazing how few people on this planet on a daily basis get told by anyone that, you know, that they're loved. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like the old story about the wife that was talking to the husband, and she looked at him and she said, you know, we've been married 33 years. You've not told me one time you love me. He said, I told you 33 years ago when I married you, I loved you. If anything changes, I'll let you know. Well, that's not sufficient. Right. We want to know that we're loved, and we want to feel that we're loved, and we want to hear that we're loved. So that's why I don't believe it's coincidental that the very first thing Paul talks about in that list out of the book is love.
Well, as I was reading through the chapters and the 9 keys, yeah, I thought it sounded suspiciously similar to something I had read before. Right. But it's okay to plagiarize the Bible, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, nobody's come up. You think about it. The greatest leader who ever lived was Jesus. Yeah. No doubt about it. He was the leader of all leaders. Well, the fruit of the Spirit, in essence, is the description of the life that Jesus lived. He lived a life of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. You know, think about every one of those traits, you think about Jesus. So, you know, again, the reason I love this book, there are a lot of leadership books that people read and they go, well, I'm not a Fortune 500 CEO. I don't own my own business. You know, it doesn't matter. You can be a truck driver. You can dig ditches. You can be bagging groceries for a living. You can put this book and these principles into action in your life and have an influence that will absolutely be mind-boggling.